Hey everyone, welcome back to video number 10 of our study through the book of Galatians. The section we're covering today comes from Galatians chapter 3, verses 15 through 25. But before I begin, I want to announce the winner of the Boredom During Quarantine video. So at your own home, make sure you do a little drum roll, okay? The announcement of the winner is right now, okay? So you need to have a drum roll. The winner of the Boredom During Quarantine video goes to Emily, Adam, and Eric Bohm, okay? The Bohm family, the whole family of the Bohms, okay? They won the Boredom During Quarantine videos. And so first I want to congratulate them, and they will get a gift card sent to them in the mail. But I also want to say a big thank you to them and all of you who participated in the videos. It was really difficult for me to try to pick one. I was struggling trying to figure out the best one. But at the end of my devotional, I'll put their video at the end so everyone can see it. But a big congratulations to the Bohms, and thank you for everybody who participated. So let's begin in our text today. I want to begin by reading verses 16 through 18 of Galatians chapter 3. This is what it says. The promises were spoken to Abraham and to his seed. Scripture does not say and to seeds, meaning many people, but and to your seed, meaning one person who is Christ. And so maybe if you're confused, he kind of explains it right here in verse 17 by saying, what I mean is this. The law, introduced 430 years later, does not set aside the covenant previously established by God and thus do away with the promise. For if the inheritance depends on the law, then it no longer depends on the promise. But God, in his grace, gave it to Abraham through a promise. So right here, I want to make sure that you see that before, as we were studying at the very beginning of chapter 3, he was talking about faith and the works of the law. And now he's going to start talking about the promise and the law. And so right here, he's getting at that the law and the promise. There's this law and there's this promise. And what happens with this is that some people were saying, well, no, you get the promise that God had given to Abraham by the law, by the inheritance that you have by the law, the working out of the law. But right here, Paul is saying, no, Abraham believed in the promise. And so the promise is still there. You don't have to work. You don't have to do the law to be able to gain this promise. Or in other words, the promise is not voided by the law. So just because the law was established doesn't mean that you just throw the promise away. No, the promise is still there. And Abraham believed in the promise, and whoever his descendants believed would also receive this promise. So I think the main point of verses 15 through 18 is that the promise is not voided by the law, but the promise is still there if you believe in it. Let me go ahead and read verse 19 for you. It says, "Why then was the law given at all? It was added because of the transgressions until the seed to whom the promise referred had come." And so he's pointing back a little bit here to verse 16. But right here in verse 19, he asks the question, why then was the law given at all? Like, if it doesn't matter, then what was the purpose of it? And he tells us it was added because of the transgressions or the sins of the people until the seed to whom the promise referred had come. And so the seed that was to come was Jesus. And Jesus would come. Let me actually continue reading. I want to read verses 24 through 25. I think this will help you understand a little bit of what he's trying to talk about when he talks about the law and the promise. Reading verses 24 and 25, it says this, "So the law was our guardian until Christ came, that we might be justified by faith. Now that faith has come, we are no longer under a guardian." So right here, Paul is talking about the law being a guardian. So think of the guardian almost like a babysitter, right? So you grow up, you have a babysitter, you adore this babysitter, right? This babysitter takes care of you, it feeds you, it makes sure you're doing the right thing. This is kind of what the law was for. The law was intended to help guide us and direct us closer to God. It wasn't a bad thing. The people loved the law. People sometimes view it as legalistic and bad, but that's not how the Jews viewed it. They loved the law. They tried to obey the law as best as they could. But the law was temporary. The babysitter isn't supposed to be in your life forever, right? Like, you grow and you mature and you no longer have that babysitter. And in the same way, this is how the law was until Christ came. Christ came and fulfilled the law to where the law was no longer needed. It was a temporary thing. Now, this doesn't mean we just throw the Old Testament away. We don't believe in the Old Testament. No, the Old Testament is key. It's crucial. We have to have the Old Testament. But Christ came and fulfilled the law to where we can follow Jesus and no longer have to fully obey the law that is in the Old Testament. The thing that I think Paul may be drawing out here a little bit is that there's still people trying to follow the works of the law, and that they say that, no, you have to follow these works of the law to gain the promise that was given to Abraham. But he's saying, no, that's not how it works. You believe in the promise, and that's how you received the promise. Just as Abraham believed, so you believe and you receive the promise. And it made me think of our reflection question, and so here is the reflection question for today. When are you most tempted to look to your own efforts to make yourself acceptable to God? Again, when are you most tempted to look to your own efforts to make yourself acceptable to God? So what time, what day, what week are you most tempted to make your own efforts, do things in your own way to make yourself accepted to God? Because what I want you to know is that you don't have to do really anything to be accepted by God. Instead, it's your faith in Jesus that makes you accepted in God. And you fully obey Jesus. It doesn't mean you just sit and do nothing, but your faith that you have placed in Jesus has already made you accepted to God. So you don't have to be tempted to look to your own efforts to make yourself acceptable to God. Instead, it's already what Christ has done for us. And we place our faith in him, and we believe in him, and we live out in obedience to him because of what he has done for us. So again, the reflection question is, when are you most tempted to look to your own efforts to make yourself acceptable to God? Realize that Christ has already made you acceptable to God. I love you guys. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll talk to you on Friday. And make sure you don't end now. You keep watching, because I will show the BOEM video right after this.
To an average day at the BOEM household during quarantine.
Well, I bet your mother was a nobody. Oh, shoot, my bad. Dun 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 dun